So notes 4.4 is graphing a function rule. And our essential question is, can I graph equations that represent functions? And so we're given an equation. I'm going to tell you right now, we have 3 examples. And so we're given this equation, and we are going to go through these 3 steps and then graph it on the graph. So whenever you are given an equation, this is not the only way, but this will work every single time. So this is the way we're going to start to graph these for right now. We're going to start by making a table. We're going to pick values for x, and I always suggest we pick a negative, we pick 0, and we pick a positive. And then we substitute those values in for the x in our equation, and we get our y value. So I'm going to write it out here. We're actually going to we're going to have y equals, we have our -2, we're going to plug in the -1 where the x is, and we're going to add 1. And we need to do that math. And when we do the math, -2 times -1 is a +2, plus 1 gives us 3. And so my y value would be 3. This ordered pair, if I want to write it as an ordered pair out to the side, would be -1, 3. We plug -1 in for x, and we get 3 for our y value. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to plug 0 in. So I go through the same steps. Plug 0 in for our x value, and if we do our math, we get 1 as our y value. So -2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And this ordered pair would be 0, 1. And we need to do this a 3rd time. For the last value, we like to have 3 points with these linear equations. And I'm going to plug the 1 now in for the x. And so here I have -2 times 1, which is -2. And I add 1, and I get a -1. And so we picked values for x. That was step 1. We picked those values. -1, 0, and 1. Those were the ones we chose. If you want to choose 50 or 100, go for it. But your graph's going to be real difficult. We plugged those numbers into our equation, and we got our ordered pairs. And so our last step is to take those 3 ordered pairs and to graph them. I'm counting by ones on my graph. So whenever we graph, we always start at 0. 0, the origin. I'm going to go backwards 1 and up 3. So this would be my first point. I just graphed -1, 3. I'm going to go left or right nowhere on my x and up 1. That would be my second point, 0, 1 graphed. And my last point, I'd go over 1 and down 1. And I just graphed the last point, and you can see that this is a linear equation, linear function, and it's a straight line. So we graphed it. They're not all going to be linear. So let's look at 2 more examples. And again, we're just going to pick values. How we can graph any equation is we can make a table. Step 1, we can pick values for our x. You get to pick them. I would pick a negative, a positive, and a -0 and a positive, and then graph the ordered pairs, and that's it. So as I go through this example, we want to pick values for our x. Again, I suggest we pick negatives. I'm actually going to pick like -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And this is an absolute value equation. So yes, we need to plug in -2 in for x. That got sloppy. I'm going to rewrite it so that we can read that a little bit better. Y equals absolute value of -2 minus 4. Well, when we go through that and we actually do that math, plugging in the negative 2. The absolute value is the distance, so it's really 2 minus 4. And when we do that, we actually get a negative 2. So my y value for that one would be negative 2. So the ordered pair here is negative 2, negative 2. And yeah, we have to plug all of these in. So let's go ahead and plug in the negative 1 now. I'm going to run out of room here at some point. The absolute value of negative 1 is a positive 1. Take away 4 and you're at a negative 3. So this ordered pair for negative 1 is going to be negative 1 comma negative 3. We need to plug in 0. And we need to keep going. If we plug in 0 and do our math and show our work, we're going to get negative 4. Zero minus 4. Let's go ahead and plug in the number 1. So I'm going to show it over here in green. If I plug the number 1 in, it's just 1 minus 4, which is that negative 3. So 1 comma negative 3. And let's go ahead and show our work and plug the last one in. Y equals the absolute value of 2 minus 4, which is just 2 minus 4. So we get 2 comma negative 2. So that would have been a negative 2. 2 minus 4, negative 2. So these are our 5 points. And yeah, you need to show your work. We need to plug them in. We need to make sure we do our math correctly. And so if I go ahead, and if each of my hash marks here stand for one space or one value, I'm going to go back negative 2. And I'm going to go down negative 2, and I'm going to put a dot. I'm going to go over negative 1, and I'm going to go down negative 3, and I'm going to put a dot. I'm going to go left or right nowhere, and I'm going to go down to negative 4 and put a dot. Over to positive 1 and down 3. And this is actually 1. This is an absolute value. It creates that V. This is non-linear because it does not create a straight line. This is one that we kind of looked at off of our notes yesterday. And so again, we just have an equation, and how do we graph it? We make a table. We pick the numbers for x. I always suggest pick a negative 0 and a positive. We plug those into the equation so we can get our values out to the right for y, and we graph it. One last example. So this example, we have, it has the x squared. We call this a quadratic. Again, we're just going to plug numbers in. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to pick negative 1, 0, and 1. I'm going to write a little bigger on this one, and maybe we will be able to fit it all on one line there. So we're doing the same process, showing our work. I'm plugging negative 1. Whenever you substitute, always substitute in parentheses. So negative 1 is substituted for the x, and we square it, and we need that in parentheses. This means negative 1 times negative 1, which is a positive 1 plus 2, which you get 3. So this ordered pair would be negative 1 comma 3. Let's go ahead and substitute in 0. Y equals 0 squared plus 2. Well, 0 times 0 is 0 plus 2. The 0 is always kind of the nice one to plug in, isn't it? So we have 0 comma 2 as our ordered pair. And now we need to substitute in our 1. And when we do that, we get 1 squared, which is 1 times 1, which is just 1, plus 2, and we get another 3. And so this is 1 comma 3. So if we were to graph this, we would go over to our negative 1 and we'd go up to 3. over 0 up 2. And we'd go over 1 up 3. And this is going to create what we call a parabola. I should have used some different colors here, sorry. It's going to create a parabola. It's going to be a U. So it is different than the last one. We're not going to have a V here. We will have a U. Creates a parabola because it is a quadratic. And we could look back to 4-3 notes to see the difference between all of the different equations. So to